Hey y'all, thanks so much for joining us today at The Heart. My name is Dominic Insenius. I'm the leader of this church community, and I'm so grateful that you have taken some time out of your day in your journey of faith to be a part of what God is doing here in the city of San Marcos. We have a saying around here, you don't have to go to church here to go to church here, and that means you are welcome to enjoy this message from your tablet, phone, or computer, wherever you're watching it on. Big things can happen when we expect God to move. So I pray today that God would speak to you through this message. The message today can encourage you and empower you to move throughout your week and what's next in your life. So enjoy this message. Today, what I want to do right now, though, is I want to wrap up our Waymaker message series. And if you haven't been in a while, or this is your first time here, your first time digging into the Waymaker series, you can find everything on YouTube and on the podcast. You can catch up on the message series later this week. But what I want to do today is we've explored some ideas on what it means to be a waymaker, okay? What it means for you to be a waymaker. We talk a lot about how God is the waymaker, that God does things that only God can do, that God has the power to be a waymaker, but God's Spirit is within us. God's Spirit is activated within us. And when we choose to act on that, we become a waymaker. And so that's what I've wanted to do in this idea, in this series, is explore how you are activated to be a waymaker. You are a part of what God is doing in your family, at your job, in this community, in this church. And so I've been thinking about this in the end of the year. I was telling our team this earlier. At the end of the year, it's always a time of reflection, right? Looking back at the year and looking at all the good things that have happened. And there were some. Quarantine wasn't all bad. And looking back at some of the terrible and rough and hard to handle things, and there were many of those. And then we get to kind of dream about the possibility and the hope of what is to come, right? The possibility and the hope of what is next in our life. And it got me thinking about choice. And to be fair, I think about choice a lot. Choice is powerful for me. It's one of our core values at the Heart, and I would probably even tell you it's a core value of my for me in my personal life. Every time we talk about giving, financial giving at the Heart, we talk about it being a choice. It has to be a choice. Otherwise, it becomes an obligation. If something isn't a choice and you're forced to do it, can you ever really want to do it if it's something that you're forced to do? And so today, for the a few minutes that we have together, I want you to be thinking about that is where in your life do you feel like you're choosing to do something that you want? Where in your life are you doing things at your job, in your relationships, with your finances, that you're doing things that you feel obligated to do? I was thinking about the things in my life that wouldn't be if I didn't choose, because sometimes there's this duality in thinking between I'm called to do this, I'm made for this, I am meant to do this. You ever thought that? I wish I could find what I was called to do. I wish I could find out what I was made for. I wish I knew what I was meant to become. You ever thought that to yourself? I wish I knew what I was meant to be, where I was meant to work, who I was meant to be with, where I was meant to live, what job am I meant to have, what career path am I supposed to follow? You ever thought these things to yourself? Because in this idea of waymaker, some of us might feel like I have never been called to be a waymaker. I will follow people, and I'm happy to clap at the end of a song that Birdie sings, but I'm not gonna blaze the path for people to follow. I'm not called to do that. I wonder how many of us miss out on the opportunities that God has for us in our life, in our marriage, in our families, because we are waiting to be called. We are waiting for the clouds in the sky to spell out exactly what we're supposed to do next. And meanwhile, while we're looking up, waiting for the clouds to spell something out, we are missing the opportunities of the way that God is making around us. We are missing opportunities to be a part of the people's lives that are right in front of us. So we can be on this side where we're waiting for a calling. We're waiting for something to happen. God, tell me what to do next. I promise I'll do it. Just tell me. Whatever you need me to do, I will do it. But I'm not going to move until I know. And then, on the other side, there's this thing called choice. I struggled with this in what we do here at the Heart, right? 5 years ago, coming up on 5 years in March, we started what we call the Heart. And there's a lot of things we were unsure of, very few things we were certain of. And the longer we have done this, the more uncertain we are of many, many things that we're doing here. But I can tell you, as I have been reflecting on this year, that I am doing this on a Sunday, being a part of this community, because I choose to. I don't feel obligated to be here. I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. I don't even feel like I'm called to be here. I feel like I choose to be here. So maybe I'm called, maybe I'm supposed to, maybe I'm meant to, but I would never know because I'm too busy choosing to be here. Maybe the things in your life that you are wondering if you've been called to do that. Wondering if you've been called to go work at this particular place, or if you're meant to be with this particular person, or if you're supposed to do this thing next in your life. Maybe we can see that we have been empowered to choose, and when we step into that choice, that's when our faith is activated. That's when we can see a way being made. So what if God is already making ways all the time, but we don't see them because we're waiting for God to tell us which way that he made, which one am I supposed to take? What if instead of waiting for God to tell us which path to take is we start walking and we walk by faith and we trust God and we check in with the people around us, and whatever happens, we're going to face it together as a community, as a family, because no matter what lies ahead of us, no one could have predicted 2020 the way it went down, but no matter what lies ahead of us, we can choose to be there for each other. That's what makes it real, when we choose to be there. Right? Christmas is coming up here in a couple of days. Some of us are going to be around family that we choose to be around, and some of us are going to be around family that we feel obligated to be around. Don't raise your hands. They don't need to know. I don't need to know. That's for you. But we have an amazing opportunity to, even if we're going somewhere that we feel obligated to go, that once we're there, we can change our mindset and say, you know what, I'm going to choose to be here. Watch how differently you interact with your parents, with your cousins, with your uncle and aunt, with your brother and sister. Watch how differently the interaction goes when you, in your mind and your heart, say, I'm going to choose to be here just for the next hour. Give yourself an hour. I'm going to choose to be here. What would I say if I chose to be here? How would I act if I made the choice to be here? No one guilted me into it, even though your mom did. I've talked to her. Or that's my mom, maybe. Who knows? Even if you were forced to be there, what could happen if you chose to be there? So there's a piece of scripture I want to look at today. This is in the book of James. Now, before we jump into James, I want to tell you a little bit about who James is. Why something he wrote down thousands of years ago ended up here. It's believed that he was the brother of Jesus. Okay? A lot of what he writes in this very short book, it's more like a letter, a lot of what he writes in here echoes the teachings of Jesus, points to the person of Jesus in here, in these writings. And I want to read a piece that you may have heard before, possibly, that has to do with your faith and your faith in action. Now, he wasn't writing this letter specifically to us right now, this church here in 2020. But what we can do, you and I, when we read through James and when we read through any of this, is we can look through this and look for the truth, look for the wisdom that is in here. Now, I'm going to read out of the New Living Translation. Your translation that you have at home or that you have on your phones there, it might look a little bit different. That's okay. That's okay if it looks different. It gives us a good wide scope of what the authors of the Bible were trying to say, the messages that they were trying to get across. And I want you to listen for what James is asking us to do, the reader. What James is asking them to do. Let's watch this. This is James chapter 2, and I'm going to pick up in verse 14. It says, "What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions?" Okay, so if you're taking notes, write down James 2:14 through 18, or you can take a photo of it or whatever, because maybe you can look at it later and it kind of help you with reflection on what we're going to talk about today. Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, "Goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well," but then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? Now, someone may argue, some people have faith, others have good deeds, but I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. I'm the one that capitalized by. It's not in there. It's not in the scripture that way. I capitalized by that way. I will show you my faith by my good deeds. You see that? So it's not one or the other. The author here, he's talking about an argument between some have faith and some have good deeds, and he combines them in a powerful way. He said, I'm going to show you my faith by my good deeds. Now, you could easily read this and maybe say that James is guilting us into saying your deeds matter. It's all about good deeds. Make sure you're doing the right thing, and we can take that all the way to your good deeds are what make your relationship with God perfect. Your good deeds is what God does to measure your life, like The Good Place, the show. But I don't think that's what James is saying. I don't think that's the message he's trying to give us. The message I see James trying to give us is that your faith comes alive. Your faith is visible to those around you when you show it in action. Because you can have faith in here. You can believe all the things that you want to believe, the things that you feel like you're supposed to believe. You can feel like you know what the right things are to do. But when you show your faith by being there for others, by connecting with people even when you're not in the mood, by choosing to be around family even when you feel forced, when you can show your faith, now your faith is visible. Do you see this? Now your faith is not just yours. Now your faith is seen by those around you, and they can see the love that you want to show. They can see the faith that you have been practicing, the faith that you want to show them. I will show you my faith by my good deeds. And like I said, I know that I have a leaning towards choice. I know that. But what I see here is a choice. Because you can have faith, or you can practice good deeds, or you can choose to show your faith by your good deeds. You can choose to show your faith. So if you're taking notes, there's a couple things I want you to write down. The first one is this. When we take action in our faith, we see our faith come alive. If you were here for the first weekend of Waymaker, this is a similar idea. We're kind of bookending this series with this idea. It's the action in our faith that lets our faith come alive. A faith that is stagnant, that kind of just goes through the motions, is one thing. But a faith that takes action, a faith that moves, a faith that reaches out, a faith that challenges, that is a faith that is alive. I would even say a faith that faces doubts becomes more alive than a faith that never allows a doubt to be anything but a seed. When we make room in our life for doubt, that is when our faith comes alive. That is when we are able to take action in our faith. Doubts require an act of faith. You could almost even say doubts are an act of faith. We see our faith come alive. Watch this. Okay, one more thing I want you to write down here. Being a waymaker is about making a choice, not waiting for a calling. Being a waymaker is about you making a choice, not waiting for a calling. Because if we are just sitting here waiting for God to tell us what to do, then we are missing out on so many opportunities. What if he doesn't tell you? What if he's busy? I always think that. What if God's too busy? Being a waymaker is about you making a choice. You get to choose the future that you make with God. Do you see that? You get to choose the future you step into with God. You don't have to wait for a calling. Even we can read through so many stories of the Bible. And some of the stories are very explicit. God asked this person to do this, right? God asked Moses to lead the people out of Egypt. God asked certain people to do certain things. And so if we're not careful, what we might think is that, okay, well, if God really needs people to do something powerful, then he's going to ask them to do it. He's going to burn up a bush and speak audibly to people, and the clouds are, the sky is going to darken, and a booming voice will come down from the heavens, and God will tell you, he'll tell you, yes, you should buy that avocado. That is a good one. If we're waiting, you got to test them. You know what I mean? If we're waiting for God to tell us exactly what to do, then we're missing an opportunity. Missing an opportunity to exercise the power of choice. Missing an opportunity to exercise the power of making a choice that we are empowered to make because of what God has put in us. We can make a way. God might have been the original waymaker, but God has empowered us. He has put our spirit in us, and that means that we can also make a way. We are a waymaker, not because we're called to make a way, but because we choose to make a way. We choose to make a way in our marriage, in our relationships, in our job, in our finances. That is up to us what that looks like. Now, don't get crazy. I'm not saying it's up to us and nothing's up to God, and don't combine ideas. Let yourself dream here for a second. What if making a way meant you partnering with God on what he's already doing in your life? What if you creating a future, you looking forward to tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, to next year, to the future? What if you partnered with God in creating that instead of waiting to see what God had in store? You know what happens when we just wait and see what God has in store? What we really are doing is waiting to see what life has in store. And what life has in store is a mess. What life has in store is battle after battle after battle. And that's nothing to get bummed out about. In fact, it's something to get excited about. But because when we have a community around us, when we have a faith that is activated, then battles don't scare us. You see that? It doesn't make them easier. I'm not trying to minimize the things that happen to you in your life and the things that have happened this year. That's not what this is about. I'm not saying let your faith overcome everything that has happened. No. I'm saying that you can face those things because of an activated faith, not in spite of an activated faith. I'm not saying an activated faith or you choosing to be a waymaker is going to make everything okay in the future. It's going to make everything, it's going to make everything better. No problems will happen to you. Some of us were told that growing up or maybe recently, or I don't know, but we've been told this like, well, once you have God in your life, everything's going to be great. And that's just not true. Sometimes things are the worst. But that doesn't make God any less real. And if we can see that we can partner with God in making a new way, right? That's what's so special about a new year, so special about a fresh opportunity, is there is a new way to be made. God does new things, and we have an opportunity to step into a newness with God. Okay, take notes. I want you to write down one more thing. God has the power to be a waymaker, most definitely. But his choice to be a waymaker makes all the difference. God has the power to do whatever he wants. God has the power to do anything in the universe, in the world, in America, in your home. He can do whatever, but the fact that he chooses to, all of that boils down to choice. Again, I'm biased. Even Jesus going to the cross, even Jesus sacrificing his life was a choice. He didn't have to do it. If you want to, it's towards the end of each of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where Jesus is alone and he's contemplating. I know this isn't Easter, it's Christmas, but at Christmas, let's talk about the end of Jesus' life. How fun is that? He's contemplating on what he has been asked to do. You see this? He has been asked to sacrifice his life, not forced to sacrifice his life. Because I'll tell you, being forced to sacrifice your life, there's a word for that. It's called murder. But Jesus wasn't forced to sacrifice his life. He was asked to sacrifice his life by his Father, and he chose to do it. That's what makes it such a great act of love, is because he chose to do it. God has the power to be a waymaker, but his choice is what makes all the difference. His choice to make a way. God wants to be in our life. God wants to show us the way that he is making, the ways that he is making in our life, and we get to partner with him in that. Last thing I want you to write down. When our faith shows action, we are choosing to make a way for God to work in our life and through our wife, my wife. When our faith shows action, we are choosing to make a way for God to work in our life and through our life. So I'll tell you, I can think back to my life 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and I can honestly tell you, I don't feel called to be a good dad. I don't feel called to be a good husband. But I go to counseling and I read books and I have tough conversations and I get feedback from my wife and my son because I choose to work towards being a good dad. I choose to be a good husband. That doesn't mean it's always there. It doesn't mean it always happens. Doesn't mean that's always how I'm described. But I'm not waiting for God to tell me the kind of husband I should be to my wife, Amber. I'm not waiting. I can't possibly wait for God to spell it out in the clouds, the kind of dad I should be for Corbin, because y'all, he's about to be 18 and he's applying to colleges, and soon we won't have the same kind of thing going on in the house because he's going to be off to the next phase of his life. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if I had been waiting all these 18 years for God to tell me exactly how I was supposed to raise him, for God to tell me exactly the conversations I was supposed to have? Y'all, I would have missed it all. I would have missed an entire father-son relationship because I was busy waiting for God to tell me exactly what to do instead. What I chose to do is pursue it every day. Have tough conversations. It hasn't always been easy. I'm not always seen as a good dad. But it's a choice I'm going to continue to make. So maybe you didn't start a church 5 years ago and you can't relate to what it's like to maybe feel called or not called to leading a church, but all of us have a relationship in our life that we are either choosing to be a part of or feeling obligated to. All of us have a situation in our life at work where we feel like we love this part of work, but we feel obligated to this part. So what could it look like for you if you, instead of you waiting to be called to make a way in your job, to make a way in your finances, to make a way in your relationships, instead of waiting to feel called, instead of waiting for God to speak with his audible voice into your life, what if, just this week, you could make a small choice to step in the direction of where you want that relationship to go. To make a choice, to take a step in a small direction of how you want to interact with people that you work with. You have been empowered by the God of the universe to choose what is next. To choose what is next by partnering with God. By bringing God in to what's going on. By bringing community in to what's going on. That is the opportunity that we have to be a part of. It's a choice that we get to make. Y'all, thanks so much for joining us today at The Heart. To find out what is next for you in your journey of faith, I want to invite you to go to theheart.church/next, see what's in store for you, get in touch with us. We would love to be able to connect with you and see how we can partner with you in your journey. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.